Hi folks, so I've got a new showing off of my simulation, my soft body simulation here. Looks like the angle it's coming in at is a bit odd. Gosh, that's what I get for moving the game a bit. Okay, so here we go. That's working now, I think. So this is how it looks when the damping is completely off. You can see the slightest spacing and gapping, and eventually the vibrations will actually tear most of the central piece of the simulation apart, and you'll start to see all of the nodes starts to swirl together. But luckily I've also created just a way to tone that down. So essentially if a node is moving at less than 0 or less than 1 in speed and velocity, it just gets set to 0, which surprisingly does not actually break the entire system. But what we got going here is just every so often, about 3 seconds, I send another bullet through. It'll at this angle, this location. It's got some randomness in its angle and velocity and speeds, but actually right now it's not set to be random speed. But every time it hits it, it starts creating the mass just slowly, more and more it will move. And we'll actually start to see these vibrations in the central area, like I see, kind of combine and end up breaking nodes and links by stretching and rotating them, which we've already seen a little bit of what's happening here. And then after we see that, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like with the damping that I created in. Set to on. As you can see, once nodes get stretched beyond a certain distance, they do break. It's kind of funny. We've got like a loose, unlinked set of shrapnel that's forming here. And since the node that we're shooting at them as a bullet gets actually reset, none of these are from the bullets. It's all from the actual the block that we're hitting. So see here we've got some nodes trying to resolve themselves, and what ends up happening is they end up really creating an interesting area where it looks like it's going to blow up, but what I haven't seen is actually, I haven't seen it blow up yet. It just kind of starts a chain reaction, but it seems to eventually settle down, strangely enough. So it seems like it's able to resolve itself without creating like some kind of a fully runaway reaction. But so what's the speed or the size of this is right now? It's I believe it's 75 by 50. So 75 tall and then 50 wide. So that's, and it's running at around 12 frames per second right now. See, what you can see here in the center is that it's more or less settled. It's not going to blow up the entire simulation, funnily enough, but it's still not stable enough for a what you'd want for a video game. Because if you're driving this around or using it, you definitely don't want that. But what I'll do is set this to true, so it'll dampen out any values less than 1 every frame. So let's see how that runs now. The first initial shot is actually randomized and it can be quite fast, so that's why it looked like it skipped hitting the outer realm. I haven't implemented faster checks for physics based on how fast it's going. But as you can see, we've got already, like, this area is probably going to largely stay stable, and we'll probably see a peeling up of that area, just kind of slowly peel off and eventually break out. So I'll just let it keep running for a bit. And you can see there's a lot less vibrations in the material itself, but there are still some. So that's what's happening when the speed is like at least 1. But if it's in between 0 and 2, that really, really slow drift, that is what we were preventing from happening, essentially, by doing that little simple bit of code. But I do like the look of this better, especially for a game, and the way you can see the shockwave through the material eventually kind of stop, which is admittedly less realistic, but when you're zoomed out because this is probably going to be about the size of the entire spaceship at the end of the setup, so yeah. And it's just kind of relaxing just to watch it, even, honestly. I've always kind of been a fan of physics engines and seeing that. Okay, so there we saw a small glitch there. I think it's related to how we resolve the position of the ball, because if it's being calculated and then it's fast enough that it can just bounce over or like bounce at a weird side, it'll look a little odd, but mathematically it's technically correct. But I don't like how it collides like that. But basically what we're seeing is it could be essentially a slow motion of like what a machine gun might do to a block of, you could call it steel or something. Yeah, so you kind of saw how they're like switching around almost. That's that glitch I was talking about, which I don't particularly understand. That looked like it bounced like there, and then it sent that one up, which doesn't quite make sense. It might be related to the velocity or something. I have to look into that much more deeply. But I do like what we're getting is essentially a distribution of randomness, assuming it doesn't hit also another one of the shrapnel that's flying out. But it's very cool. It runs. This is actually running on a single core, actually, by the way. I have like an i5 at 4 gigahertz or whatever, so. Okay, hopefully you can still hear me. I forgot to. Well, my headset dies if I don't have audio playing. So. Despite that weird switching thing, it's a very, very accurate representation of what we would want happening in a game. Yeah, so I'm also planning out to make this multi-processed so that it'll use more than one core. Because what I want to make is, something that has the ability to survive a good amount of like shots, maybe even just like a simple local multiplayer game where you could drive around like in asteroids, but your ships would have some kind of physical reality to them. And also, I have some ideas about how asteroids might break apart and stuff and so forth. So there will be a couple modes in the game, but right now I'm aiming for at least a local multiplayer kind of a game. That's going to be a lot of fun. I've got some. I might not have it easily accessible right now, but in the future I'll upload some of the art that I've been using and making for the game, and I'll upload more info soon, but right now I'm still working on this. The code won't be available publicly for now because I really do want this to become something that I can, work on and implement into something more complicated. I want to add more realistic material physics, because right now the bonds between the masses in the spring via the springs are fairly loose, and they only pull based on how far away the masses are from their rest position. So if they're pulled back this far, they'll spring back pretty far. But if they're also pulled beyond a certain distance, which right now it's actually set to be 3 times the rest distance, so if you like about there, it would actually just snap and break. So that's kind of what's causing the breakage right now. It's not a result of velocity or material strain being simulated. It's rather just a function of the distance between the nodes and via their link. So yeah, I mean, right now I've got a quad core computer going, so if I have 4 cores going, that would mean I could run this game at approximately, I don't know if it's going to be exactly like I'd want it, but it would be maybe 4 times the nodes that you see here, or maybe this is just the equivalent of 1 triangular ship. And of course, I also have these in my simulation I'm working on. It has the ability to create and tune different material types. So I want things like ceramic plates on the outside, which would kind of shatter easily, but they would stay more solid and less jello-y. And then the interior would be made more, interior shell would be made of something like steel. So it's going to take a lot of tuning and experimentation. I'm also planning on making like a painting mechanism for making a lot of nodes and things quickly, because right now I just have a large for loop that goes line by line, creates all the nodes, and then it goes line by line, creates all the links between each of the neighbors. So it's very, very brute force to set it up, but that's necessary. And the collisions themselves, they're actually quite brute force as well, but what I can do is implement something that has localized optimization and try to make it a little bit more complicated for myself. But what you're seeing is actually more or less what I predicted would happen as well. It's slowly peeling off, and eventually it will break, so I'll probably end the video around then. I do have plans to create something like spider webs for it as well. So yeah, I'm seeing a lot of that like switching glitch where they're like velocity, like it's just weird. I wish maybe it's got to be like maybe we can check for we can update the faster nodes by maybe like the fastest 100 nodes, make those checks more frequent or something like that. Especially because we know which nodes they are. Yeah, I know this is very nerdy, and right now it doesn't look like much, but once I maybe start overlaying some graphics on top of the nodes, or maybe I'll even keep it looking like this so people can see what links are being broken and so forth. There's a lot of cool possibilities for things that I can work on here. Let me check on. Okay, so it's still recording apparently. Still got audio going. Good. But yeah, that's what it looks like as of now. I mean, I've been working on it. I can show you the Python one that I made. I didn't realize how inefficient it was going to be, and it actually doesn't reset automatically, but this is what I'm getting. I'm getting about 30 FPS on 4 by, I want to say 30 or something, 5 by 30, so that kind of shows you what the performance is, where, I mean, if I was doing a 20, what am I saying? I did a 75 by 50 here. That's running at about 12 frames per second. So if I did a similar node, like if I made it multi-processed, I could get something much larger, or could either do a larger simulation, or I could do a smaller simulation with higher frames per second. So it could be, that glitch, now that I've seen it a bunch, I hadn't seen it earlier, so what I might be seeing is possibly a function of the low frame rate affecting the simulation. So that's a common issue with these kinds of things I've heard before, because when you're calculating it, the time step can have a tendency to skip over nodes if it's moving faster than a node itself. So there's ways to optimize it for sure, but I'm very satisfied with it. This is that version with the damping of the speeds less than 1. So it's actually just a straight damping. If anything's less than 1, it goes directly to 0. So that's why what you're seeing on like the bottom right corner is largely untouched, because the oscillations of the material haven't gotten to hit that area yet. The painting mechanism that I'm designing, I've done a little bit of it on paper, but the essential idea behind it is I want to be able to draw parallelograms or just lines of different rectangles, bind all of the nodes and their neighbors together, and then continue onwards like that. But there's some math that has to be done in order to find out which ones will be neighbors specifically in order to do that. But I can also create something that essentially reads in an image from a black and white JPEG or just any image file, and what it would do is make the white squares be the dot or the circles, and then just go line by line. For the ones that are white, you bind them together with their neighbors, and then just continue on line by line. So that's slightly different from the painting mechanism, but it is something that I've considered doing. I'm just gonna keep recording this because I'm very happy with this. I've spent probably a good amount of the last week, if not more, working on this idea and working on this simulation system. You can see the back of the plate is starting to bow out as well. So that'll be interesting once it finally breaks through. Seems like the lower velocity things are actually not breaking through. But there we go. Bit of rippage. Pushed it out a bit more. All of the little pieces of shrapnel, since they're not disappearing, what's happening is they're just kind of they're taking some of the energy by deflecting it a bit. So the more shrapnel that's appearing, the harder it is for the actual little molecule bullet to get to the back of where it's supposed to be going. Some shrapnel flying off there. That's cool. In the final version, I'll probably call the nodes that have floated outside of the screen as well. I don't have that implemented yet, but that'll increase some efficiency by however many are being removed, of course. On say like a smaller simulation by maybe 25 by 75, what you see is actually I get 60 FPS on one core. So when I'm able to figure out the multiprocessing, this would be a very exciting project, because this would be running closer to 60. I think it's still 16 FPS right now, yeah. So it's got a little bit faster. I think the damping actually makes it a little bit faster, but I could be wrong, because I might be doing that later in the method. So I'll have to look into that after But yeah, the next steps for me are more materials, being able to creating a method that can create just at least at bare minimum a just another large rectangle of a different material. So I'll be putting that large material in front of the plate and seeing how that affects the simulation. The physics checks, I've only seen that actually happen with this low frame rate, because I didn't see it earlier, because I only saw it maybe 5 minutes before I started recording this. So it's almost at the end. It's almost broken through, and then I'll probably end the video then. It's very realistic. I like how it's like you'll see like some like cracks in the material as well. I don't know if there's any that stand out to me immediately, but maybe some you can see like that could be a crack there. That would also be very similar to what a crack is in a real material. Like right there's some broken bonds. Oh, it's ripping through. That one bond in the back there is holding on for dear life. Is this the one? Not yet. But it is inducing different damping. I do want to look into implementing different damping, because if it at all matters, it would be cool to see if that changes anything. But mostly what I'm interested in is making sure the materials feel less jello-like. I could increase the minimum speed as well. That might work to dampen down some of the weird oscillations, but it also might decrease some of the interesting behavior where we're seeing where it'll slowly and subtly stretch outwards to eventually break the bonds. So that one bond I mentioned is still holding on. Oh, that's gonna be it. And then it broke through. And after that happens, all the air in your spaceship just rushes outward. So, I mean, I might implement something that can simulate air simulation. I'm not sure yet. That would mean a lot more nodes to be calculated. And it would essentially just be a bunch of... Honestly, it would be unbonded nodes just floating around, but they would be mixing around a lot. It would probably be an unstable reaction. That was funny. Some of the shrapnel just got hit by other shrapnel and it broke off a bond. So this is going to be less of an interesting video now, but I would like to thank you all for watching, all 5 of you. Yeah, I'm gonna end this video. Thanks for coming, watching, and I hope to show you guys at least some gameplay within the next week or so, because I've got some ideas on basically how to add physics to it. You just add what I mean is add the ability to control and fly the ship around. And depending on the efficiency of all the multiprocessing processes, I'm gonna see if I can actually get working on a ship. But if it's not, then I'll try to fake some of the physics, and sometimes we'll turn off the physics and take a snapshot of the simulation for next time a bullet gets near that particular sprite. So I'll talk about that more in a future video, but you know, so this isn't going to be a shared publicly kind of code, but oh wow, that's cool. It hit the corner there. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for watching. And yeah. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.